University of Cape Town has resorted to online classes indefinitely, this following a protest by the Student Representative Council. Now, the SRC embarked on a shutdown on Monday to protest a fee block which prevents students from obtaining their results or even registering for a new academic year. So to discuss this even further now, we're now joined by the University of Cape Town spokesperson, Elijah Maholola, this morning. And thank you so much, Elijah, for your time. Good morning to you. Now, let's start with some context here with regards to the student protests. We know that they have informed your decision to have online classes indefinitely, but when did those problems with the SRC actually begin? Perhaps give us some clarity and context.
Good morning to Melo and to the viewers. We basically only had, and which is a bit unfortunate, we only had on Sunday evening, on the eve of the start of our academic year, that the SRC was likely to embark on this sort of action. And I say it's unfortunate because the management of the institution has always been willing to engage. We are known for over the years, whenever there's issues, dissatisfaction, come around the table and discuss. Now to hear on the eve of the start of the year that we are going to have this sort of dissatisfaction is a little bit problematic in that it almost puts the university in a position where issues cannot be resolved amicably. 2 weeks ago, there was engagements, there was similar, in fact, if not all the same issues around fee blocks, around accommodation, and the management and the SRC got around the table and got at least some resolution to some of those issues. So one would have expected a similar thing if the SRC felt like maybe whatever was agreed back then 2 weeks ago was no longer probably addressing whatever concerns they had put on the table.
So we understand that the grievance from the students' side, at least the SRC, is that they're demanding a policy review in which fee blocks and financial exclusions are eradicated indefinitely. What was then the agreement between yourself and the SRC pertaining to their grievance?
The history of the issue on the policy around fee blocks and the registration process thereof is that the university has done significant work in meeting the students at least halfway. 2 years ago, when you owed anything more than 1,000 rands, you couldn't register. But since last year, council agreed to lift that amount to 10,000. So this means that any student whose debt is more than 10,000, is less than 10,000 rather, can actually register. Now this is a movement, tangible movement from both council and from the university management. And it is of course also important to emphasize that whatever grievances, whatever demands, whatever issues that the student leadership might have in relation to the fee block or the fee policy, it becomes subject to a council decision, which is why coming on a Sunday on the eve of the start of the classes is problematic, because council will then have to meet and review, because the university management cannot do anything outside of that policy, which says only student owing less than 10,000 should be allowed to register. Yes, there are other interim measures that can be put in place on a case-by-case basis, but broadly, in terms of the fee block limit, which we believe the university has moved considerably from 1,000 rands to 10,000 rands, at least to sort of accommodate and recognize the financial difficulties that some students might have. So that is one of the things that has been done. And of course, we've broadened our student financial aid program. In 2022, last year, we spent 1.9 billion on student financial aid across postgrad and undergrad levels. That is a 100 million increase from the year before. So it's not like we haven't had measures that have been put in place by the executive to try and address some of the funding issues and the financial concerns that students may have.
Yeah, it seems the accusations from the SRC to the University of Cape Town also include almost, if for lack of a better word, racial connotations against the university. I just want to quote what they say. They say that these financial blocks, or fee blocks rather, Elijah, are more of a tool to oppress black and poor students, and they're calling for them to be eradicated altogether. Is this the case? Is this the case of, black students within the UCT and not being given an opportunity to study, and therefore these fee blocks being used to oppress them and not to allow them to receive education within the institution, as per the complaint and grievances here by the SRC?
Fee blocks are applicable to all students irrespective of their race. So whether you are black, you're white, you would have to pay your fees. If you owe more than 10,000 rands for 2023, you are not going to register. It might be the case that those students, the majority of them, as we know, the socioeconomic scenario in this country, it might be the case that those students happen to be, probably a large percentage of them happen to be black. But even in those cases, there are measures. I'll give an example. One of the things that the university puts in place is called an annual financial appeals period, where you come to the university if you are financially eligible, if you are academically eligible. Now, that means if you probably are falling within a particular financial criteria and if you are performing academically, and then you would have groups of students or a cohort of students, a small number, that probably is not necessarily meeting the academic and the financial criteria for assistance and being outside that period. And we also have other means. We have what we call our grace period. Grace period means you can access the academic program even if you have not paid or reduced your fee to 10,000 by the time the deadline comes. As long as you show the university that these are measures that I will take to reduce my fees by the end of the next 3 months, maybe I have a big payout, my family has got a big payout that is coming, some policy or the other. You show us that and you are allowed to register. So there is no factoring in or no consideration on the basis of race. It's a council policy that is applicable to all students at UCT.
And I suppose, going back to the protests, I want to make reference also to what you have called the protests. You've named them disruptive actions, going beyond the bounds of lawful protest. How so?
So we've seen some acts that are not allowable, and the students' leadership are aware in terms of what is lawful protest and what is unlawful protest. We have seen some acts that are not in line with what lawful protest could constitute. We have seen, obviously, the blocking of roads. We've seen the disruption of classes, and that infringes on students, those who are not part of the protest. That infringes on their democratic right to be in an environment where they can be taught, where they can learn. So some of those acts are of a concern to the university because the executive does not want to be in a position where, knowing how engaging, how willing we are to almost meet around the table, the executive does not want to be in a position where there is sort of a situation of having to go the legal route. You would note that, for instance, even in the midst of these protests, there can never be police presence on campus, there can never be private security on campus, and that's regulated by council policy. But there are other means that the university could take, and in an endeavor to avoid considering those means, the university is urging the student leadership to come to the table and engage.
All right, just quickly before I let you go, Elijah, so you've resorted to online programming. Until when will you have online teaching? Do you have a set date?
No, we don't have a set date. We are hoping, however, that in the next day or two, as we continue engaging with the student leadership, we will find resolution. We are hoping it's really not going to be something that takes long, because we believe that through engagements and through negotiation, we will find a breakthrough to these differences.
All right, we'll leave it there. Elijah Maholola, thank you so much for your time. UCT spokesperson speaking to us this morning regarding, of course, the protests by the UCT SRC saying they do not want the fee block as it's affecting most of the students, particularly black students, whom they describe as being robbed of their right to education. All our thanks to Elijah Maholola for his time this morning.